Welcome to another presentation from the CV Academics Foundation, home of the AMP Honors Program.
Welcome, AMP community. Today we are here with a very special guest. It is my pleasure to introduce Pepper Burruss. So let's take a little bit different transition and go back to focusing more on equipment. I'm sure you have dealt with all sorts of equipment, whether it breaks or people get hurt in a game or whatever. One thing that I don't think a lot of people understand is that the equipment continues to evolve, but for different reasons. You have things like helmets and shoulder pads that are evolving for injuries, to prevent injuries, and then you have things like cleats, gloves that are evolving to help performance. How does that relationship kind of work when it's, okay, they had a period where the pads were just massive. We just want as much stuff as we can to stop people, and then they realize, well, that kind of inhibits their performance. So now as we get better materials, how do we start to incorporate those, and what was that progression like to watch, and getting lighter helmets versus heavier helmets? And I know, I'm sure you've debated that a long time, but how was that to go through?
Well, we might need a commercial break to finish this one. I'm going to tell you what, that it's not the right cliche, a can of worms. So you didn't open a can of worms, but you opened a huge subject matter. The one thing that and I know you understand, but I want your audience to understand, is that, first of all, we love to be called athletic trainers, and thank you for that, as opposed to trainers, because we don't train the athletes anything. We don't train. Maybe back in the day they did, because there were no strength coaches. Likewise, we're not equipment people. We have a huge equipment staff at the Packers, expert people that go to conferences, and they've actually begun a certification process for them as well. Very nice. So to talk about changes in equipment, one is very basic. The invention of plastics and the like were right around 1960. So there weren't a lot of plastics around. But where I'm going with this are synthetics. Is that when I came into this business, it's freezing cold. You put on long johns. Now your parents would know, your dad would laugh and say, long johns? Well, they were cotton, and they were kind of pleated, and you pulled them on, and they got sweaty, and if it was raining, they were wet, and they were awful, and on and on. Well, that's what we had, or another pair of pants or whatever. And then I don't think the Jets were the first to do this before my time, but growing up in New York and being a pretty big Jet fan, there was a pretty glamorous quarterback there by the name of Joe Namath. And little did people know that they were wearing pantyhose underneath of their football pants and their long socks, because our women friends understood if you put a thin layer of synthetic on bare skin, it helped, and on and on. And I don't want to say that was the genesis of all of these running pants and tights. It was the idea of synthetics and things that didn't absorb water, and on and on. Football pads were to have the flexibility to move around. The joints were made out of leather, and padding was foam. Excuse me, and a lot of the foam back then is what we called open cell, meaning like a sponge. You put it in the sink, you squeeze it, absorbs water.
Yep.
Those are open cells. Then they came up with closed cell foam that if you put it in the water and squeezed it, maybe it absorbed a little bit, but it didn't absorb sweat and smell and on and on. And leather always absorbed water and got stinky. I mean, to this day, not picking on it, they go into a hockey locker room with those gloves and stuff, and hard to clean them. So when a lot of these leather, a natural product, was replaced with synthetics, things got lighter, things got cleaner, things got stronger. The evolution from cotton long underwear, cotton and wool lined gloves, helmets. The early helmets were literally made of leather. And in fact, there's an argument made, were the first helmets, did they become used by the Army, and they called them tankers. The guys that were in Army tanks, they had to wear helmets because they're banging around in there, and they looked just like the helmets that our forefathers wore. And they were leather, and you can imagine not much energy absorption, and on and on and on. But the long and short of it is that helmets went way too many years without significant changes. We went from, you may not even remember, suspension helmets where there were straps in it and the helmet was kind of suspended on top of your head. And then they developed cells, and they called it a celled, C-E-L-L-E-D, a celled helmet, because it had cells of foam in it. And then they added air to them. And now the sky's the limit with what they're doing. We were kind of watching what was going on with racing, Indy, NASCAR, whatever, because those helmets are fit to their head. You don't go in the locker room, equipment room, and take a large, medium, small. And sure, there's adjustability to helmets, and experts like Red Betty can adjust and make them higher and lower and whatever have you. Helmets now, and it hasn't transitioned way down because of the expense into the littlest of our leagues, they're actually taking scans of the heads now. They walk around with a machine that looks like a big cell phone, and they take a scan of your helmet, and your head and the inside of the helmet is fitted to your head.
Really?
Awesome. Problem, that helmet's one and done for you.
Yep.
So it doesn't go back on the shelf. And now you're talking budgets. Wait a minute. Well, you're going to wear that as a senior in high school, and next year the senior is going to get the pick first. And I hate the fact that, the freshmen get the last of them and on, and we're changing that. But if you have a helmet that's manufactured for your noggin, no one else can use it.
Yeah.
And whether they can be recycled, repadded, I don't know. I've been out of the business not quite 2 years, so who knows what they're doing. But technology, analytics, material, video study, these force vector things that they're doing with analytics is unbelievable with the helmet research, the way you're getting hit. Because you talk to a lot of your fans, and they're going to say, okay, we just have to keep something so that Pepper can put on a helmet and go to this wall and just bang. Okay, that's funny. It's some bet you made, when you were out with your buddies, you could do that. Well, we've got to add in the rotational component too. And what happens is the head is spinning and moving in the helmet, and there's a rotational aspect. And then you've got to add in the fact that no matter what you're doing, you're trying to protect an egg. Okay, we don't want the egg to break, I get it. No, you don't get it. You're trying to protect the yolk. The yolk is inside that egg, it's moving around. Your brain is inside the shell. And until you start putting screws through your skull into your brain, the brain is going to rotate and impact and go forward and rebound and come back and hit again and on and on. So kind of goes back to the thing I said, God really didn't design our head to hit people with.
Yeah, absolutely. So in your opinion, what was the best protocol, rule, piece of equipment, thing that the NFL has done since you've started up until now?
Oh, I need a yellow flag to throw the penalty on you for that question, and then you throw the red flag, the challenge.
Yeah, I'll take it.
I really don't know what the best thing is. There's way too many bests. The explosion in medical technology, the staffs, the inclusion of women in the athletic training room. I guess I've just got to cop out and say science.
I think that's a pretty good answer.
Science is the answer to that, because science could be analytics. We went from film to video, the video that you can do wacky things with, that you could measure and look at vectors on. Computers, my goodness gracious, how it's impacted sports care, diagnostics. If you want to lob one up easy for me to smack back, or what are the two greatest changes you've seen in sports medicine or in medicine itself? Arthroscope, MRI, those two. And so that's science. That's science. My dad was a career chemist. My brother's a PhD chemist. My wife's a PhD nurse. And they say, well, what happened to you? You're not a chemist. I said, yes, I am. I mix Gatorade. So science.
It's harder than people think.
Yeah, science. Well, I've told a lot of people that they said, when are you going to retire? Which is past tense now. I said, well, when I figure out exactly how cold to make the Gatorade. And you'll see somebody that squinches up their face and they're like, you know, you're nuts. I said, it comes natural to me.
Well, I only have one more question for you. You've seen a lot of different things and you've had a lot of different experiences. What is something that you would like to see happen in the game of football pertaining to athletic training, pertaining to any of the medical staff taking care of injuries, prevention, equipment, any of that stuff? What's one thing that you kind of, throughout your career, you were like, you know what, I would like to see this change. I think this could help.
Well, that's another one, but I've already thrown my flag because time to think about that. But I think if you gave me, to go back a couple years, the acceptance of these sports science changes to be accepted by the players and the coaches and even the fans, because we're changing the game that they love. And they have to know that, sure, this is a huge money, beyond money comprehension, it's a money game, but this is done in the best interest for the athlete. And secondly, we don't have a crystal ball we're looking into. So the acceptance of the fact that this is a changing technology and no different than what's going on with COVID. How will COVID change our world? With who's got the crystal ball? Will we ever go back to school 5 days a week or whatever? So in sports, I just want to see people accept the process of science, embrace analytics, embrace change, and I think the game, you know, people say, what's the future of the game? Are we impacted the youngest of tykes playing the game, tackle? Yeah, but let science go that way. You know, did we used to use car seats in the back of cars? No. Did we used to use car seats that face backwards in the back of cars? No. Do we do this? Do we do that? That amount of acceptance is easy to take. Let sports have some acceptance to change, and I think we're not always going to hit 100%, but you know, in baseball, if you hit 300, that's, you know, I don't want to say 3 out of 7, but if you hit 300, you're killing it. You know, if all of a sudden you've got to be 100% in every rule change you make,
Yep.
Life doesn't have a lot of 100%, other than the fact that none of us get out of here alive.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have to give you credit because that was a pretty good answer with the time constraints. I think that's going to be timeless regardless. There's always going to be change. There's always, we're going to be learning new things. We're going to be evolving, so I really like that answer.
Well, I didn't tell you there's a teleprompter behind you. It's giving me these answers. So
Yeah, you don't have to tell me.
You got to run with it.
You don't have to tell me or them that.
Run with it.
We can keep that under wraps. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much on behalf of the whole CVA team. This was awesome getting to sit down and pick your brain about some of these things. I mean, I'd love to, I could sit here for 2 more hours, but I know you got places to be. So
Well, if it just happens to be a beautiful day out. If it was a snowy, rainy, crappy day, we'd sit for 2 hours. But
Yeah.
no, I appreciate you asking. Anybody can talk about their job, a job that I absolutely was blessed to have, and was everything I dreamt about. So it's easy to talk about it. So whenever you want to do it again, give me a call.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much.
This has been a presentation of the CV Academics Foundation, home of the AMP Honors Program.